The federal ban on evictions has just been overturned by a judge in the United States. Hey, everybody, it's JJ. You're watching Bull Boom Bear Bust. It's May 5th, 2021. We're going to talk about what this means. Are we going to see a flood of people getting kicked out onto the streets, a flood of homeless people, tent cities popping up everywhere, even more than we've been seeing already? Well, let's go ahead and sort through it. So, U.S. judge voids U.S. moratorium on evicting renters during pandemic. Now, we've covered this topic quite a bit on this channel. As most of you know, there's a federal ban on kicking people out when they don't pay rent, but cities and sometimes entire states can have their own rules, their own moratoriums against landlords kicking people out. So it's not going to affect every location because you still have the local rules. In some cases, moratoriums are still going to be in place for certain areas. But places that did not have their own rules against kicking non-paying tenants out are going to be the ones to look out for. Now, if you look at the sign hanging on the side of this window, you'll see the opinion of a lot of people, especially people that can't pay their rent. They're saying no job, no rent. So then you have to look at the opposite view and look at what the landlords are going through. They have costs. They have upkeep, insurance, utilities, homeowners association fees. Many of them still have mortgages. What are they going to do when there's no rent? And if it's no job, no rent, what about people that quit their jobs or get fired from their jobs or just get laid off? So as you see, no job, no rent could really be a big incentive for people to get fired and not even look for a job because you're going to get free rent if you're not working. So why work? Right? It's kind of like what we're seeing now with all the stimulus checks and the payouts and the enhanced unemployment benefits. Businesses are having a hard time in many cases finding workers. So the argument can be made that no job, no rent is going to be a big incentive for people to not look for work, maybe get fired on purpose. Who knows? Now, what they're referring to is because of the sickness. They're saying if you got laid off or have no job because of the sickness, then you should not have to pay rent. But who's going to sort through all the millions of people and figure out why they got let go from their job, if they quit, if they got let go because of the business went out because of the sickness, right? And the economy fallout, caused their business to close down. Who's going to sort through all that? So as you can imagine, it's an impossible task to try to enforce something like no job, no rent. But yet people are still marching and holding up signs and saying that there should be no rent if you don't have a job. Now, what I think is likely to happen is we're going to see a lot of cities and states coming out with their own moratoriums. That way, the federal one will not really matter that much. Or the overturning of the moratorium can get flipped back. Right? It can be disputed, or there could be some sort of other law enacted, maybe an executive order. There's lots of other things that could be done to keep kicking the can down the road, as we call it. But I believe, and I think many of you also believe, because I've seen your comments, that this is too big of a mess to sort out through legislation. Right? Let the market sort it out. When people don't pay their rent, they shouldn't have a place to live. It's sad, but that's going to fix the problem because prices will then come down. So ask yourself, if you were a landlord, would you rather have $1,000 rent or charge $1,000 rent to somebody who's not going to pay? Or would you charge $600 rent to somebody that you know is going to pay? Right? So rents will come down. We need a correction. We need a little bit, at least a little bit, a tiny fraction of a free market to try to address what's really happening here. The more intervention and more rules that are implemented here is just going to make the problem worse. Right? So when rents come down, that's going to fix the problem because when people get kicked out, the landlord's going to have to look for new people to pay the rent that can pay the rent. And if the economy's bad and people don't have enough incomes, guess what? The landlord's going to have to come down on their asking price for the rent. And it should be up to the landlord if they want to accept someone's income from their job or if they want to accept someone that's on just handouts or payouts or someone that's just living off the system, so to speak. And that will be the landlord's decision. If they make a bad decision and they rent to someone that is not going to pay the rent, they should be able to evict them and they should be able to have their home foreclosed. Right? We shouldn't have a foreclosure moratorium either. It brings up the same problem. When no one can get their home foreclosed, then you're going to see a whole bunch of homes that normally would be on the market for sale off the market and not for sale. And we're seeing the effects of that right now. Of course, there's other factors when it comes to home prices. We have low mortgage rates. We have skyrocketing materials costs and lumber. We have banks lending money to infinity, basically, with no limits. No one even knows how leveraged the banks really are because of the fractional system. But instead of trying to at least implement a little bit of free market economics here, we're going in the opposite direction. It's more top-down control, more rules. Now, the overturning of this eviction moratorium could be a step in the right direction. And you're going to hear some sad stories about people losing their home. A lot of people will probably have to move in with relatives or find some other living situation. I saw a person that was parked up at the drugstore here in my neck of the woods in Southern California. They were in a motorhome, and you could tell that they were basically living out of that motorhome, right? They weren't just there to get a prescription at the drugstore in the parking lot. They were there. They had towels hung up outside. They had chairs sitting outside the motorhome. Essentially, they were using the far end of the parking lot as a campsite, right? So essentially, you would see kind of a switch. A lot of people that are living at home with their parents because they can't afford rent somewhere, well, they will then get the opportunity to rent the place at a lower rent, at a lower cost, because once you, as a landlord, once you're allowed to evict tenants, you'll then have more of a incentive to lower the price to attract a renter that's going to pay. All right, so the people that are losing their homes because they can't pay the rent, they're going to have to go maybe move in with their relatives. And then the people currently that are living with their relatives that are working, maybe they'll be able to afford rents now because now the rent prices have adjusted some to meet the actual supply-demand equation. Now, there is something that could make the cancel rent idea work, and that would be to cancel everything. No more taxes, no more loans or debt or mortgages. Utilities shouldn't cost anything. Everything should be free. Otherwise, the cancel rent situation is not going to work. And there are people out there that will make that argument. They say the government, they should just pay for everything because they can print unlimited amounts of money out of thin air via the fiat money bank. And therefore, no one should have to pay for anything. But there's a dark side of that also, because when you're dependent on payouts for everything, and you're not independent, you're dependent, where you're going to have to play by their rules, jump through a lot of hoops. You're going to lose a lot of your freedoms, what little freedoms you may have left. Right? It's kind of like when you're living at home with your parents, a lot of times you have to follow their rules. You don't set the rules. When you're living in someone's house and you don't set the rules when you're dependent on payouts from somebody else. All right, so we'll see how this plays out. The decision to overturn this moratorium on evictions, well, that could be overturned and flipped back to no one can get evicted. So again, we'll have to see how it plays out. But thanks everybody for watching this report. Let me know what you think down in the comments, please. I'd like to hear from you. As always, hope everybody's well, stay safe, stay prepared. Till next time, bye for now. Peace.